So it's very important that we understand what natural selection is and how it works while we play Spore. The idea of natural selection is this. Species change over time. This happens very, very slowly, and it happens randomly. And sometimes, when a species changes, it helps it to survive in its environment. Sometimes, it doesn't. The species that change for the better, when the changes help them survive, they end up having more offspring, and they end up flourishing and doing much better. Species who don't change or whose changes don't help them have a harder time surviving, and eventually they risk going extinct. So take a look at this picture of the two giraffes. It's very obvious which giraffe is going to have an easier time surviving. What's important to note is that this giraffe wasn't just born with a much longer neck. That probably happened over many, many thousands or millions of years. But the fact is that that giraffe will have a much easier time getting food and surviving. Then, when that giraffe has babies, its babies will probably also have a long neck, because that is a kind of trait that is passed from parent to child. And so those babies will also have long necks, and they will continue to survive. The smaller giraffe is going to have a much harder time and will probably not live as long or have as many babies, and eventually that kind of giraffe will probably go extinct. That is what natural selection is and how it works. It is very important to me that you understand the differences between the game Spore and how evolution actually works in real life. Spore is a lot of fun, and I really enjoy using it in class, but it gets some things wrong or might lead you to think things that aren't correct. The first thing you have to keep in mind is that evolution happens extremely slowly. We're talking thousands and millions of years for big changes to happen. If you think back to the giraffes from the previous slide, don't think that the smaller giraffe would have a baby that might happen to have a neck that's a foot or two longer. That is not how it happens. Rather, it takes thousands of years for that kind of change to happen. The game has to be played in a few hours, so it doesn't do a very good job of making you understand how much time is actually passing. But if you pay attention when you evolve, it'll tell you that millions of years are passing. Second of all, the game makes it seem that evolution is guided, like someone is deciding what kinds of changes will happen to a species, and that is absolutely 100% false. Evolution is 100% random. It just happens randomly. So if we think back to our giraffe example, the mere fact that the smaller giraffe needs a longer neck to survive better does not mean that it will start to grow a longer neck, or will its babies. The giraffe that does have a longer neck just happened randomly to begin to grow a longer neck over time, and that began to be advantageous to it. But I want to stress that evolution is not guided by anything. It's 100% random. So Spore is a wonderful simulator, but it is just a game. Please keep at least those two facts in mind while you're playing. Here we are at the home screen of Spore, and we see all kinds of little planets here. And most of them are going to tell us that they're new games that we can choose to use ourselves. But some of them have these little blue arrows rotating around them, and those are saved games. So there's a game that I saved a few months back. Before we go to play, though, let's go into the options and settings and take note of where the full screen option is. I would suggest that you turn off full screen. It'll be much easier to take screenshots as you go if you're not in full screen. But if you do go full screen, make sure that you know how to get back to settings so that you can turn it off to take those snapshots. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a new world that looks nice. We're going to start at the very first stage, which is the cell stage. We're going to move through those stages eventually, but we start with the cell stage. We have a choice here. Are we going to be an herbivore or a carnivore? The difference is spelled out on the side. Carnivores eat meat, while herbivores eat plants. I think I'm going to go ahead and choose carnivore. Just press forward. We'll start the first playthrough on easy. And you have to name your planet here. You're not naming your creature. This is the name of the saved game. I highly recommend that you use your name here. Press next, and the game begins. Here we are in the tide pool. This is what we might think of as the primordial ooze. All life started in the ocean. And we are a microscopic organism, and that means we are extremely small. We are so small that you would need a very powerful microscope even to see us. And we start out as a very simple organism that only has a few cells. There are several ways to move around. I can use the arrow keys or the WASD keys. But what might be a little simpler is to use the mouse. Now, if I click and hold the mouse button down and move the mouse, my little organism will follow. I don't need to click, 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 click every time I want to move them. I can just hold that mouse button down. And as you can see, since I'm a carnivore, I'm beginning to eat the little red pieces. If I were an herbivore, I would be going after the little green pieces, which would be plant material. And I gain DNA points every time I grab a piece of meat. It says +1, and it has that little DNA symbol. And as I eat, I grow. And this is the key to the game, is getting larger, keeping alive, and eating. And it's going to remind me that this is a game about the survival of the fittest, and I'm not careful, a larger organism might come along. But when that organism died, it left behind a body part that I could potentially use, this little stinger. So whenever I see those, I'm going to go grab them. They are very, very helpful. So I'm going to continue to eat, continue to grow, and now it's telling me that I should call my mate. So I'm going to grab a few more pieces of food, and I'm going to go ahead when I'm going to try and get 15 or so, and then I'm going to press the mate button. I can see where the mate is, and I'm going to head towards them. We do a little mating dance, and I lay an egg, which represents my offspring. And here we are inside the body part adaptation menu. I can change my color and texture by clicking on the little paintbrush. We'll go with green. And over here, I actually have body parts that I can purchase using those DNA points that I gathered. So the back of my body, I have these little flagella. They help me move. And I can move them around. But I'm going to make some room for this spike. Put the spike behind me, and now I can ram into creatures and do them damage, which will help me survive. I can also play with the body parts that I already have, like the eyes and the mouth, so that I have the creature that I want to have. And when I'm ready, I'm going to go ahead and now I have to actually name my creature. This is the name of the creature itself. So I think we'll name this one, let's do Cedivore. And I'll press the check mark. And now we are off to the races with our new body part stinger, which means that I can crash into other creatures and do them damage. So I'll continue to eat whenever I can. Oh, good thing I got bigger. And you'll see that I was actually able to kill that creature, and he left behind several pieces of meat that I can ingest. My progress is being marked at the very bottom of the screen, the progress bar. So I'm back in the adaptation menu, and I found several helpful body parts here. This one's great. It actually releases poison behind me, so anyone who gets behind me will get that poison, and it'll do damage to them. So anyone trying to chase me is going to regret it. So I'm going to move my flagella up a little bit, and I wish I had enough points to get these little flippers, but I don't have enough points. They would help me turn faster. But right now I just don't have the points, so I'm going to have to settle for just having the poison. That's going to come in very handy as I move forward. So I'm back in here one more time because I have found some really important body parts I wanted to point out. First off, I found this new mouth called a proboscis, and it's really helpful because makes me an omnivore. An omnivore is a creature that eats meat and or plants. Oh, that means that I have twice the possible food supply as before, and that's great. Unfortunately, I won't have enough points left over for these little electrical stingers because when I get those, anyone who gets near me gets a little shock, and that's also very helpful for warding off predators. So here we are. We have completed the first part of the game. My progress bar is all the way full, and I can now click the bottom right hand button to advance to the next stage of the game, which is the creature stage. It provides you with this nice little timeline that shows what I've added to my creature and what I've eaten, etc. But what I really want you to pay attention to is up in the right hand corner. The right hand corner shows how many years have elapsed since we started playing the game. I mentioned this early on. The game makes it seem like it went very quickly. However, in real life, this would have taken 2 billion years. That is unimaginably long time. So the game doesn't always make it obvious, but it takes a long time for these small changes in a creature to happen. So if I were you, what I would do right now is take a screenshot of this. You are going to need it for your PowerPoint later on, and make sure when you take that screenshot that you can see that number up in the top right hand corner that explains how long has elapsed since you started playing the game. And you're going to find it's been a long, long time. When I'm ready, I can press the green arrow at the bottom and I can advance on to the next part of the game. So we've made it to the creature stage. This is where the game really gets interesting. I'm rotating the camera by holding down the right mouse button, and I'm going to move pretty much the same way I did in the cell stage by holding down the left mouse button and moving the mouse. I can still use the arrow keys if I want to. Since I'm an omnivore, I can eat these fruit. I can also eat other creatures, which will definitely come in handy. And as I run around, my hunger will grow, and if I get really hungry, my health will go down. So I want to make sure that I'm constantly full. And I've run into my first other creature, which is one of these little things, and I have a decision to make whether I want to be friends or if I want to be foes and destroy them. And there are two stances I can take. I can be the social stance or the combat stance, and if I want to make friends, I'm going to try the social stance. If I wanted to be combative, I have at least 3 attacks I can use right now. But if I'm social, I have these 2 things. I can sing and I can charm. And the way it works is if I want to do that, if I want to engage them, I click on them, and it's going to show me that, it's going to tell me for the first time that I can be their friend. So I've chosen to be friends, so I'm clicking on the social stance, and I click on the creature. And the way it works is I have to mimic him. So if he sings, I have to press the sing button. If he dances, I have to dance. If he does what's called the charm, I have to charm. And I think the 4th one is called pose. Right now, I only have the sing and the charm. So if he were to do dance or pose, I would be out of luck. I wouldn't be able to mimic him. I can get those extra things by getting certain body parts that will allow me to use them. So certain feet might let me dance. Maybe arms would let me pose. But lucky for me, the only thing that creature did was sing, and I have that ability. So I was able to mimic him, and we became friends. And in so doing, I gained a body part, and I gained some DNA points, which is very helpful for cashing in to get those new body parts to make your creature even more different and unique and adaptive. So on the mini map on the bottom left hand screen, I can see that I have a home base, which is a little home icon, and I can see question marks. The question marks are other species, other nests of species. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some food while I'm here, and eventually I'm going to seek out some other creatures. And I found one. This time, let's get combative. So I switched to combat stance, and you'll see that I have these 3 abilities, and each one has a little number next to it. So I have the bite, the charge, and the spit, and those numbers are the number keys on the keyboard. So I can just press the 1 key repeatedly to do my bite. If I press the 4 key right there, I'll spit at him with my poison. And then we both have hit points. His are going down very fast, and I still have plenty, so I'm not really worried right now. So eventually I'm going to take him out, and I gained a body part, and you'll see in a second all his little friends are going to run away because they're afraid for their lives, as they should be. But my task, I can also eat him now to gain some of my health back. My task now is to make them extinct. And I'm going to do that by hunting 2 more of them. The top left-hand screen tells me I need to hunt 2 more of them. They're not going to make it easy, so I'm going to do my best to catch up with them and begin to fight them. And once I've killed 2 more of them, they go extinct, and I get a bunch more DNA points. So I'm smashing on the 1 key right now to kill them, and I'm going to make sure they don't get too far away. So I still have only 1 left, according to the top left-hand screen. And he's not going to escape. I'm going to get him. All right, so once I initiate combat, he turns around and we go at it. I'm much stronger than he is, so he can't really compete. And as soon as he's dead, that will indicate to me that I get the little check mark because his species is now extinct. I've wiped them off the face of the planet, and I got a bunch of extra DNA points, which I can use to cash in. So I'm going to head back to my home base. Oh, before I do that, these things are really important. Whenever you see those glowing meteorites, those are just other body parts that I can use, so sort of scattered around. There's lots of them, and make sure that you grab them whenever you see them, because having extra body parts is a really good way of becoming stronger and more powerful. So I just click the little home icon on the minimap, and my creature will automatically head that direction. It's going to take me a second to get back there, but once I do, I'm going to call my mate, like I did before in the cell stage, and I'm going to go back into the screen that allows me to change the adaptations of my creature. So we'll be back there in just a minute. And I can see one of those twinkling meteorites, so I'm definitely going to click on that. I always stop what I'm doing when I see those and go after them, because getting those extra body parts is really helpful. Alright, so I'm going to click on my mate. We'll do our little mating dance. And now, making this character unique is a lot more fun. There's a lot of things I can do, and I can start with the body itself. If I click on the main body, I can pull the tail in different directions. I can also pull the neck in different directions. If I hover over one of the little pieces of the spine and use the mouse wheel, I can make that section of the body bigger or smaller. So I can make him look really interesting. I can play with the leg joints to give him some wacky knees. I can change where the actual legs attach to the body. I can change where any other body part is. And then I have all these extra body parts. You see, the vast majority of them I haven't found yet, but I have found a few. And each body part has its own unique attributes. So if I grab this, it will allow me to have certain new things, and each ability has different levels. So right now I'm doing everything at level 1. This mouth will let me bite at level 2. Well, that's better than my current bite, so I might spend my points to get that mouth. I just drag it over, figure out where I want to attach it, put it right there. I'm going to move. I don't think the electrical things do anything on the land, so I'm going to get rid of them, get their points back for them. I'm going to move the eyes somewhere where it makes more sense, and you really get to have a lot of fun here designing this new creature. They end up looking really wacky and really interesting. So have fun. There are a lot of amazing body parts to find, including ones that will let you jump and ones that will let you fly. So keep that in mind. I just gained what's called a pack member. I got to the certain part on the progress bar, and now I get to have a pack, which is really cool. I can click on one of my fellow creatures and mimic him. He's going to sing, I'll sing back, and we become friends, and now he's in my pack, which is great because he'll follow me around, and if he attacks, or if I attack, he'll attack, and if I get attacked, he'll defend me. So it basically makes me like twice as strong as I was before. And at different stages in the progress bar, when I get there, I'll have another pack member, so there'll be 3 of us. And when I get to the next one, there'll be 4 of us total, and we really can do a lot of damage if there's 4 of us. So if we attack a creature, there's 4 of us attacking. So we become really powerful. So whenever you can have a pack member, make sure that you do so. It'll make you a lot stronger. I also want to reinforce the fact that finding those body parts is super important, because you can do a lot of really cool things. And see, there's a piece of the meteorite that I can grab, and that's perfect. That's a wing. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It says like it'll let me jump and it'll let me glide. Jumping is exactly what it sounds like. I can jump with the space bar, and gliding is kind of like flying. And the higher level I can glide, I basically just end up flying, which is a lot of fun in this game. So keep that in mind. You knew this was coming. Time for our PowerPoint. So you're going to go ahead and make a PowerPoint about your Spore creature. You're going to start off with a title slide like mine. I picked a theme that I liked, that I thought fit well with Spore. I made one about our cellular organism, and I have little arrows pointing to various parts of its body, the adaptations it has, to explain how it helps it survive. I'll tell you how to go back and see that if you didn't take a picture already. Here's the timeline. I told you to take a picture of this earlier, but I'll make sure that I tell you how to do that in the next video. I have one about the habitat, so take a picture that mostly shows where the creature lives and explain why it lives there or why it does well there. Then we're going to have a couple of, this one is about competing for food. So you have a picture of who you are fighting, other creatures in the world. Then the next 2 slides are about the adaptations of your creature. So you're going to have a picture of your creature, a nice good close-up, using the snipping tool, and then you'll have little call-outs that explain how that body part helps it to survive in its environment. This slide, this next slide, is where you find a real-life creature and compare it to your creature. I found a scorpion was very similar to my creature. They both had those over-the-head stingers. Then you'll have another timeline slide at the end of the creature stage that says how long has elapsed then. Should be billions of years. And our last slide, you're going to copy word for word from my slide. I want to make sure that you really understand how this game is different from real life. So copy this word for word. Here's how to go back and find the number of years in the timeline, and also how to take pictures of your previous iterations of your creature. In the bottom right hand of the screen, there's the history button, which brings you back to this timeline that shows the entire history of your creature, what you've eaten, when you died, what kind of body parts you chose, and also in the top right hand corner, the number of years that have elapsed at that point in the timeline. You're going to need that at least twice. On the bottom left hand corner, you have what's called the Sporopedia, where you can switch back and forth the creatures that you've created and ones that you've seen in the wild. And what I did is I switched from the cell stage to the creature stage, and I see my creature, but I also see some creatures that I've come in contact with. If I switch back to the cell stage, I can click those little 3 dots and get a nice full-size picture of my cell creature, which you can snapshot to put back into your PowerPoint.